This is Anna from CYFIRMA. Welcome to a brand new year, 2022. We hope your year has gotten off to a great start. And from our research on cyber activities among threat actors, cybercriminals are certainly planning to kick off the year with a bang. And thank you for joining us in our very first live webinar this year. In today's session, we will discuss cyber trends which are likely to emerge in the coming months. These predictions come from our research team's observations on new threats and risks which are fast gaining traction. Our speakers Saurabh Lah and Thomas Marave will share insights on kinetic cyber attacks, dive deep into collaboration among state actors, assess the cyber risks related to mobile devices, and discuss how cybercrime will evolve into an investment asset class. It all sounds very intriguing. Let's get started. Over to you, Saurabh.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Anna. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A beaming sunny morning, and hopefully it'll be an intriguing and a learning session for all of us as we run you through the top cybersecurity predictions that CYFIRMA teams of research analysts are predicting some of the trends that we are going to be able to see. We'll get started, and I have with me my colleague Thomas, who will help give you a little bit more color in technical terms for each of the predictions as we go by. So let's get started. In 2022, right, and this is based on our trend analysis of what we have seen in 2021 and what we have been actually seeing also in the past year. It is noteworthy to mention that CYFIRMA monitors almost 700 threat actors and 1,400 campaigns. And this is a gist and a summary of what we have seen and our research and analysis of what we are going to possibly see in 2022. So our analysis says that, and this should not be a surprise to any one of us, cybercriminals will continue to evolve their modus operandi as they have done earlier. But in 2022, they'll be attaining greater sophistication and modification or modifying their techniques, their tactics and procedures to outsmart cyber defenders. If we think that in the post-pandemic world, we have seen all that could be seen in 2021 and going back into 2020, well, that is not the end of the world, and we will see very stark realities, new trends, new operations, new things that will come really and show their face in 2022, keeping cyber defenders on their toes. With the development and wider adoption of radical new technologies like 5G, we all know that Singapore will become 5G compliant in the next few years across the island. There is a launch of 5G in US this week, and many other countries have adopted. This makes a better user experience for some of us who are utilizing this, but also gives another opportunity to cyber criminals, things like 5G, cryptocurrencies, industrial robotics. They can be used also in the wrong way. So attackers will find renewed motivation to diversify with their attacks that are not easy to foresee, and that'll be very difficult to mitigate. So stay tuned. As we say, no surface is out of cybercriminals' reach and influence. And we'll deep dive into each of these areas that we predict will be a cause of concern for cyber defenders. And let's go straight into it. We've all heard about Internet of Things, IoT, IoT. And some of us or most of us have had an opportunity of working with the operational technology space. Now, the hypothesis here really is I'm not sure how many of us know that almost 15 billion IoT or IoT devices are expected to be in action by the end of 2022. And this number will grow immensely to almost 27 billion by 2025. Now, we just talked about 5G, and this is because there is the need to capture a lot of data near the edge. There is a need to do lots of analysis, optimize business models, and many other reasons because of which IoT is being adopted very heavily. So together with the rise of cellular IoT devices, which some of us are already using, connections over 5G, as we talked about, it basically means that the footprint of potential access points for cybercriminals is going to grow dramatically. You name it, right? Smart homes, offices, industrial deployments. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There will be much more to go. Therefore, CYFIRMA envisages that hackers will leverage operational technology due to the convergence between IoT and OT to orchestrate cybercrime. The development of digital twins, which is nothing but the comprehensive digital simulation of entire buildings, cities, and systems, offer a treasure trove of data and access points to those with nefarious intentions. Let me invite my colleague Thomas to paint a little bit more colorful story around this with his technical acumen.
Thank you, Saurabh, and good morning to everyone from me as well. So yeah, for IoTs, the big issue here is that a lot of these are manufactured for cheap and built on open source platforms. And as we just saw in recent weeks with Log4j, open source is full of gaping security holes waiting to be discovered. And Mirai botnet is a great example of it. Its clones and the Mirai botnet itself was very quickly armed with the Log4j exploits and harvested as many IoT devices as they could reach. And the problem that comes from this is that the manufacturers often have no intention to patch a lot of these devices, and they will remain vulnerable for years to come. And they will serve their botnet masters to mine cryptocurrencies, send spam, launch DDoS attacks, or just serve as a malicious infrastructure to conduct cyber attacks, to deploy Cobalt Strike beacons and stuff like that. So that's a big issue we are facing here. Another pain point in IoT is chip shortage. I think everyone knows about. And it forces a lot of companies to source chip from unusual sources or unverified sources. And this provides a great opportunity to sell backdoor chip, which we have seen done before by not just one nation state on both sides of the fences. And at last, the operational technology, the ICS, SCADA, PCL systems, they used to be all strictly air-gapped. And even just a few years back, when someone asked an OT professional to hook them up into IT system, they would chase them out, yelling with the stick in their hands. But you cannot stop progress, and OT technology is now more and more or less indirectly connected to the internet and facing all the threat internet can offer. And at the same time, they are nowhere near hardened as the IT systems, which are facing internet for many years at this point. So this opens a lot of opportunities for cyber criminals, cyber attacks, and also, and more worryingly, for kinetic cyber attacks, which we will cover later in another point. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Thomas. All right, we've discussed just at a starting point on the kind of attack surface increase due to IoTs. But let's talk a little bit about cybercrime as an industry. Cybercrime in 2022 will become investment worthy. So CYFIRMA predicts that there will be more specialized and targeted attacks in 2022. Now, as the whole ecosystem of cybercriminals starts to behave like a legitimate industry, so you have things like outsourcing, you have things like automation, you have things like subcontracting, you have things like collaboration, some of which we'll also cover later in this webinar. With money pouring in, right, and ransomware operators reinvesting those profits, and we have seen in the past, for whatever it is said, for how many groups that are brought in, for how much of law enforcement action is actually being executed in globally, worldwide. Ransomware as an industry, for ransomware operators, cybercrime as an industry is quite profitable. Profits are increasing. There are more entrants coming in and out. So hiring freelance developers, outsourcing, reinvesting these profits are all aimed at improving the efficiency and capability of products of groups like ransomware operators under the ransomware as a service model, even hacking as a service model. Therefore, CYFIRMA predicts cybercrime will become more tradable, more exchangeable, and an investment-worthy asset class that any and every shape and size of operators are going to get their hands in, are going to get themselves well entrenched in, and are really going to look at sizable profits increasing day by day as they continue their investments. Over to Thomas for his technical insights.
Thank you, Saurabh. So yeah, we see the organic growth of specialization like data leakers, leak data curators, initial access brokers, automation developers, even professional or, in quotes, professional negotiators. They are advertising themselves on the underground forums and their skills, products, and looking for talent to work with as well. And the most prolific groups like Conti Ransomware, they are very picky in what affiliates they choose to work with. They have very high demands. So in this sense, it is not too different from traditional IT job portals. And yeah, with the risk of, or another trend we see is with the risk of getting caught being relatively low and payout in often 6 digits is attracting people who would never think about committing cybercrime before. So those are various great hat hackers or just IT professionals looking to make a quick buck by helping developing the code or automation. And most dangerous is the insider threat. There are various cases of admins with admin privileges or domain admins, network admins, which are for a hefty sum allowing the ransomware to let loose in their own environment on their own watch. And last one is a report from Eastern Europe where there are fake cybersecurity companies hiring talent on legitimate market. And these trick professionals, they think they are working for clients, doing enumeration and invasive pen tests against these companies, under some kind of contract. And it's all a lie. They are not clients. The truth is they are just doing all the dirty work on behalf of cyber criminal gangs. And from the news we've read about this, it seems that getting to the point of being investment worthy, the cybercrime being investment worthy, it's not cyber criminal gangs, but the traditional Eastern European mafia setting up these companies. So back to you, Saurabh.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Let's look at how cybercrime and the cyber world and the physical world is now starting to get interlaced. This is something that we have seen in the previous years, and this is something that we have observed in 2021, wherein we have reasons to believe that in 2022, cyber criminals will embark on kinetic cyber attacks. Now, we all understand that in the cyber world, there is a cyber criminal out there is a cyber criminal group out there, or there is a state-sponsored entity or state-driven entity for their geopolitical agenda out there, which is willing to attack, launch a cyber attack, or willing to compromise the credibility of a nation, credibility of an institution, brand value of an organization. But imagine if these attacks start hitting the actual way of life of how the human race is set up, which means having an actual impact to residents or citizens of a country, to employees of an organization or an entity, or to basically having an impact at a large scale, starting from a small scale, right? And what could potentially be the reasons? Well, it's a very simple two-pronged reason that we see, right? One is forcing the victims to be more open to negotiation. Because if you're going to put a human life or a cost of human life as an opportunity to be saved, and what can save that human life is probably paying some kind of a ransom, obviously, it's a foregone conclusion that entities and countries and organizations will most likely take that option. And the other is really enhancing the credibility, because that's how the cyber criminals and the cybercrime world works, wherein you say, hey, I am the entity and I was able to get A, B, and C country or A, B, and C organization or institution really pay the ransom. I was able to create a very clear transcending impact between the cyber world and the real world. So what we envisage as CYFIRMA is that geopolitical tensions, commercial competition, and socioeconomic differences will trigger kinetic cyber attacks, resulting in actual physical damage and loss of lives. Something that we have seen in bits and pieces in earlier years with the possible impact to a hospital in Italy, as an example, possible impact to a water treatment plant in Florida, which was thwarted. But our stark prediction for 2022 is this will now start becoming, showing up in your normal day-to-day news feed, which is which is really sad. At the same time, this could become one of the risks that all of us will need to start to deal with. Over to Thomas to add more details on this.
Thank you, Saurabh. So this is the one we touched upon in the first prediction, the rise of IoT and OT and IT convergence opens up the whole new set of opportunities and scope of the damage, as Saurabh described, to cyber attackers. And pretty much ever since the infamous Stuxnet worm that took out Iranian uranium enriching centrifuges, we have seen a gradual buildup of these cyberkinetic capabilities by all nation states. And if we go for specific examples and like how it looks like in real life, Russia is conducting their annual winter holidays exercise against Ukraine's infrastructure. They are taking out their electric grid or ATMs every year since the conflict in the East Ukraine started. Similar situation is now playing out on Taiwan where the Chinese threat actors are using the Taiwanese infrastructure as their cyber range. So as these geopolitical tensions keep escalating, they fuel proliferation of these cyber weapons, and they are designed to completely cripple energy, communication, logistics, and defense capabilities of entire countries all at once. And with that in mind, luckily so far, we haven't seen many of the ransomware attacks or cyber attacks on OT just yet. Even the Colonial Pipeline attack did not cripple the pipeline itself. It just affected the computers with accounting and client fees charging software, which forced the pipeline operators to close it to avoid unaccounted distributions. But with all that said, the cybersecurity community as a whole is seeing a growing interest in OT and industrial systems. And we believe it's only a matter of time, likely during 2022, as Saurabh said, before the kinetic attacks trickle down from nation states to cybercriminals, and they'll start holding hostage machineries, assembly lines, or maybe even whole model lines of electric or smart cars. We already seen proof of concept how to hold engines or disable brakes in a smart car. So yeah, back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Thomas. Those were really insightful insights. All right, we've been talking all about cyber attacks, warfare, and we'll probably touch a little bit more on this. But in a commercial space, in the design space, in the research space, for countries who are really having a pole position when it comes to research, when it comes to having Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies or institutions which are right there at the top. What is it all about? It is all about intellectual property. And these countries, these entities are really something that some of the other countries, some of the other entities really desire for, in a good way, in a bad way as well. Good way, they are trying to pick up their research. But bad way is they want to close the gap as soon as possible. And how do you close that gap? You most likely close the gap by either stealing or by carrying out some espionage, or by showing the other entity or showing the other country or down, so that you gain out of it, right? So the war on intellectual property will really take place on the wire. In 2022, more countries, especially those who do not have a plethora of natural resources, who are not economically sound or their economic machinery is really not working well, or they are politically isolated at the global stage because of their beliefs, because of their way of life, because of their thinking, or because how they want to modulate what is really happening out there in the world, and because of them wanting to be center stage of everything. These will be these organizations who are associated to these countries, the institutions who are being driven by these state-sponsored machineries, they will all choose to steal intellectual property to achieve their economic, their social, and geopolitical agenda and goals. Let me invite Thomas to add a little bit more color to what I've just mentioned.
Thank you, Sarah. You are absolutely correct. So, and to follow up on the previous prediction as well, the nation state, they are not only arming up with cyber weapons, they are already engaging in straight out cyber warfare through their intelligence agencies against each other. And as you mentioned, the Western countries and their allies, they are dominating most of the world through business and political influence. And the countries which don't want to play the ball with these rules are often being heavily sanctioned for it, like Iran and nowadays China as well, or North Korea for many years too. So this cuts these countries from global trade and access to all the cutting edge technologies, especially in semiconductors or highly efficient COVID-19 vaccines. And consequently, this is forcing their hands into cyberspace and theft of these technologies and intellectual properties and whatnot. So for the motivation of these actors, we can like the most shining example is Chinese CCP party. What they want the most is maintaining power and stay in control. And in order to do that, they sought and successfully delivered to its people the economic miracle in exchange for their liberties and privileges. But if this economic hypergrowth stops and the bubble pops, all the sacrifice people of China made will be for nothing. There will be other unrest, and this could boil over, which is probably the worst nightmare scenario for CCP itself. So this means that the most powerful nation in the world, or one of the most powerful nations in the world, is very highly motivated by existential threat to itself to go around and steal intellectual properties, conduct mass industrial espionage, and shamelessly copy years and billions of dollars worth of research and development in order to boost their own economy and to keep themselves in power. So to summarize it, IP and R&D theft are not going anywhere until we achieve world peace, which we unfortunately do not see happening anytime soon, and things are going to get worse before they get better through 2022 and beyond. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Thomas. All right, right about at the half-minute mark, it calls upon to talk a little bit about cyber warfare. I'm sure all the participants on this webinar know for sure that cyber warfare is already happening and has been happening for a few years. Now, in the year 2022, what we envisage based on how we have been tracking various campaigns, various threat actors, entities, groups, right? Cyber warfare will go to an approach of targeting, obviously, other nations, but there is going to be a marked change. There is going to be a change wherein cost effectiveness will come in, the amount of covertness will increase, the efficacy will increase, and at the same time, a very important aspect, which was not dealt with really easily earlier, it will become deniable. It will become deniable because there'll be many parties getting added to the ecosystem. There'll be outsourcing of different portions, different activities to different groups out there. There could be a situation wherein two different competing nations could trade targets amongst themselves, right? And it will lead to redrawing of the geopolitical boundaries in terms of who really is attacking who. So cyber warfare will no longer be restricted to nation states. Business entities and private players will also adopt cyber espionage at a level not seen earlier to advance their commercial interests and to play nice to their state-sponsored agendas so that it becomes a happy-go-lucky group for one particular state. And of course, it means that defenders from other states, defenders from organizations are now looking at a possibility of a very wide range of potential adversaries who could launch an attack. Over to you, Thomas, to add more details to this.
Thank you, Saurabh. Yeah, so we already established that we live in undeclared cyber warfare between major nation states. It's going on for years now. So new development here is increasingly more sophisticated capabilities in the hands of freelance mercenary cybercriminals fighting in this fight on behalf of their nation state sponsors. We've seen with a good example of pseudo manuscript loader that these mercenary groups take nation state capabilities or sophistications and start using them for own personal gain or finance motivated cybercrime. So pseudo manuscript loader is a child of manuscript which was previously linked to North Korean Lazarus group and was used very deliberately and very covertly in their operations. However, the way the pseudo manuscript is being used is very indiscriminate and without much effort to stay hidden at all. So that's one example of how these sophisticated capabilities are trickling down from the big fight between major states down to private individuals using them for enriching themselves. Another visible sign is development in Russian ransomware gangs, where they're silently let roam free by the Russian law enforcement if they keep their attacks aimed only at the West or perceived enemies of the motherland, and if they avoid attacking the domestic market, domestic companies, the law will just turn blind eye. And this is happening because for one, geopolitical motivations, but also this brings billions of dollars in ransom back to the Russian economy, which can be spent domestically and help it cope with the harsh sanctions imposed by the Western countries. And on the other side as well, so we are not just one-sided here, there exists a non-collaboration between major tech giants, Microsoft's, Google's, Oracle's, with the governments. They provide bulk data collection or handing over relevant information on demand to their nation agencies when asked. So this is not just one-sided development, it's going on all sides, and it's likely to just keep escalating and also getting worse before it gets better. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Thomas. All right, a term that we have all been well aware of, ransomware. Not something new, but has been really gaining everybody's attention because of wrong reasons. We predict definitely in 2022, ransomware menace will continue. The hypothesis really around this is ransomware as a service, which is one of the outsourcing model we have talked about in this session, is a thriving business today, really, because ransomware syndicates and groups can gain millions of dollars. And I really will reiterate this. It's millions of dollars they can gain in revenue by targeting organizations almost at will. They can pick, choose whatever target, they can go attack them, and they can gain almost certainly a hefty revenue out of it. And this is just one case. Multiply this by thousands and thousands and thousands, and you can understand the scale and revenue we are talking about. So the operators will continue to look for new ways to evade action. Yes, there are actions being taken by global law enforcement agencies, but it is never enough. because that economy, the ransomware-oriented economy and the ransom-driven economy is growing steadily over years. If you look at the numbers, it's startling the way it is increasing over years. It's really to the tune of, if I'm not wrong, close to $20 billion in 2021. So this will continue to look for a new way to evade. Most of the ransomware groups will continue to look for a new way to evade actions by international law firms, enforcement agencies, and more importantly, will look to hide their footprint. So ransomware, we have talked about IoTs. They will use IoT as entry points. They will target third-party software. We've seen tons of it, and Thomas will add more details around it. And they will also start targeting operational technology out there in terms of new avenues that are being presented to ransomware operators. Over to you, Thomas, to add more details to this.
Thank you, Saurabh. Yeah, so while most of the ransomware gangs are from Russian-speaking countries, we see mushrooming activity in other parts of the world, and specifically here in Asia-Pacific region. The high level of technical success of these ransomware gangs and their operations inspired Chinese threat actors to adopt these TTPs in their cyber attacks against Taiwan in recent months. And just recently, there is a Chinese ransomware gang called Night Sky, which has made news by wreaking havoc in Asia-Pacific region. And for us in Singapore, South Asia specifically appears to spawn new actors congregating around popular English-speaking underground data leaks forum. And if they are not directly attempting to create their own ransomware, they do bring established ransomware gangs into the region through collaboration as data leakers and initial access brokers. So we have the most prolific and technically advanced ransomware groups aiming their guns against Asia-Pacific and Southeast Asian companies. And there are a few factors in play here that suggest big boom of ransomware in Asia-Pacific. First one is barrier to enter is getting lower with sophistication of publicly available hacking tools and publicly available information on how to use them. The tech savviness is growing, even the low income or rural regions of Asia Pacific. And these are the areas where a couple $1,000 stolen or extorted through cybercrime can be life-changing money for these people. So there's very big motivation based on just money and profit. And at last, very minimal law enforcement in some of these areas that would deter people to actually stay away from the cybercrime. Yeah, so that's it for this one. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you. And just as a quick takeaway on this as well, once attacked by a ransomware, you will always be open to attacks by the same group or a different group, because typically after your data is returned, or if you pay the ransom and data is returned, not returned, they will always leave a footprint for them or any other group to come and attack into you. So ransomware is a one-way street. All right, let's look at mobile devices. It's become an order of the day for any user out there. I personally do a lot more activity on a mobile than I do on my PC, whether it comes to your mobile banking, it comes to interacting with your social media, it comes to looking up things, it comes to carrying out e-commerce activities, right? Buying something, delivering something, ordering something, really. Now, Asia Pacific really has an interesting demographic scenario. We have a very young and budding population, as Thomas was just mentioning. And the access to internet, access to 4G, 5G is further propelling this, wherein more number of people are getting more affluent, younger population is able to access nicer devices, powerful devices. They are able to access internet also in the rural areas, which means you have a population which is really well connected and which may or may not have a laptop or a PC, but will definitely have a mobile device. that brings an interesting play for cyber criminals and nation-state sponsored threat actors. Cyber criminals obviously could be potentially looking at gaining something out of it, maybe some monetary gains coming out of it. But I think the nation-state threat actors is what we should be really worried about, because their intention will be to more on spying. Their intention will be to more on identifying what does this country or what does this employee of this organization do, trying to understand a lot of transactional and behavioral data, which we'll very quickly talk about also just in a few minutes. So the mobile phone has become an absolute necessity directing every aspect of our lives. In 2022, cyber criminals will mount attacks to take over mobile devices, demand ransom, knowing that many will succumb to the extortion tactics. Over to you, Thomas, to add more details to this.
Thank you, Saurabh. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Like nowadays, there's more people in the world owning just a smartphone as their only connected device than people with laptops and desktop PCs. This means entire digital footprint of these people is in their phones, in their smartphones and devices, and make them essential for their daily lives. And people often joke that losing a smartphone is like losing your limb. And how much would you pay to have your limb back if you lost it? So this, of course, attracts cybercrime, as you mentioned already. And we have seen the rise of campaigns targeted on mobile devices. And this starts from smishing, which is phishing delivered through SMS, or malicious in-app ads, all the way to ransom written for Android like Anubis. And in that sense, the current landscape is very similar to what early days of ransomware on PCs looked like. These campaigns are mostly spray and pray campaigns targeted at individuals demanding low ransom from as many people as possible. And this is very time consuming and high effort for a cybercrime operation. Imagine trying to convince and make someone's grandma from rural Indonesia to pay you a ransom in Bitcoin through their phone. That's a borderline impossible task. Therefore, it's very likely to quickly evolve during 2022 in similar fashion like its older brother on PCs and desktops and servers. Threat actors will identify what are the high-value targets. This is likely going to happen based on installed apps and connected services on these phones, which will imply this is probably a corporate device, which are going to be the prime targets of these. And since they're on average contain the most valuable data someone would be willing to pay for, and also they can be exfiltrated, and double extortion tactics can be employed to maximize profits. Yeah, back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Thomas, and very rightly said. Let's really talk about data. Data is really the new engine that is driving everybody's economy. Gone are the days when you used to have paper files, people used to write on ledgers, people used to create huge mind maps on paper. Especially in the post-pandemic world with the digital adoption, new technologies coming, and the need to operate in a global economy. Everybody is interconnected. Everybody is interconnected in the cyber world, which means anything and everything. Or earlier, when you used to have something on a piece of paper, now it is not a piece of paper. It is a piece of an Excel sheet, or it's a piece of a Word document, or it's a highly confidential information in form of a database which is out there, which really contains the business model of many organizations out there, which basically means, as we have talked about ransomware as a service gangs, hacking as a service gangs, not only the bigger ones, but even the smaller gangs or smaller groups will now get into the fray, because it's quite easy to not only aim at big organizations, but even those small and medium business organizations who are all built around one idea, who are all built around that critical data that is covering that idea. Imagine if you are able to exfiltrate, or you are able to delete, or you are able to confiscate and not only sell it out there, but you are able to completely wipe it out. The impact it can have on those small, medium businesses and even the bigger ones, and the readiness of those businesses to really get onto the negotiation table and give you what you're really looking for. So as part of this prediction, CYFIRMA envisages that cybercriminals in 2022 will not only encrypt victims' data, but will also delete or destroy sensitive and critical digital assets, which are the gears running any organization's business model. The disruption and damage inflicted can be difficult to track because, hey, you delete the data, it'll be very difficult to identify who deleted the data. You go ahead and you start trading the data and you're trying to sell it out there. It's very easy for law enforcement agencies to connect the dots and identify who did what and why did they do it. So it'll be difficult for law enforcement agencies to track such actions, which will make it even more challenging for cyber defenders, organizations, states, institutions, and their agencies to really stop this or track who has actually done such an operation. Over to you, Thomas, for your technical inputs.
Thank you, Saurabh. Yeah, this is pretty much just further development or future prediction of most of the points we've already covered when it comes to ransomware gangs. It's quite self-explanatory as well. In order to gain greater leverage and force victims to pay a ransom more often, we already see reported cases where the ransomware straight out deleted the data after it was encrypted and exfiltrated. So this is already being employed and likely going to be gaining more traction and popularity because it is there is pretty much no other way how to get out of this situation for the victim companies than just straight out pay the ransom. In case of encryption, there are some methods how to do recovery because the ransomware usually, in order to be as fast as possible, they are just encrypting first 1 megabyte of data or just first kilobyte of the data of the file. So the recovery rate is somewhat successful. But if the data is straight out deleted from all the systems, including your backups, there is no other choice than go to the ransomware gang and pay the ransom. And as we mentioned already, and Saurabh said it multiple times too, you can never trust a criminal. So there is a problem that once the criminal has taken this data, they are going to use them against you again, either directly or just trade them online on the data leak market. And then some other threat actors is going to use this data to consequently and repeatedly attack the entire company again, even after the ransom was paid as agreed. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, it's becoming a very sad reality for most of our cyber defenders. All right. What is it really about the data that cyber criminals are really interested in? How do they make their campaigns more effective? How do they target the right set of people, the right society, the right country? Well, the answer is in our next prediction, which is all about cyber criminals being more interested in behavioral and transaction data, especially in the post-pandemic world. All of us, we are doing our e-commerce activities. We are identifying different things that we need to buy, we need to procure, that we have an opinion on, whether it is political, whether it is as a society, how we should be moving into, whether it is our collaboration on a free trade agreement between another country that our country is engaging in. It can be anything and everything around that, right? So as the pandemic continues, really, people's digital footprint have been increasingly defined by their access to social media, online purchasing activities, and plethora of other activities they do in the digital world. This data with behavioral hints and additional information on the personally identified financial information, your financial information, which is FII or CII, it presents a lucrative opportunity for cyber criminals because now they can define their target audience for attack. They can understand what is their behavior and the kind of transactions they make so that their campaigns can be more targeted to have a better and a wider outcome and a wider impact. And more importantly, it ultimately goes into gaining their gains, whether it's financial, whether it's geopolitical for their state masters. It can be any of those. So this is definitely something that is one of the negatives of all of us being connected and being present in the digital world. Over to you, Thomas, for your inputs.
Thank you, Saurabh. Yeah, this is directly related to boom of data leaks market, especially here in the Asia Pacific region, where a lot of leaks are happening and it's gaining more and more popularity within the younger generation. And since there is so much data coming out through these data leaks, and the main target still remain account credentials, but since there is so many data stolen and leaked out, the cyber criminals are getting more interested in some big data techniques that can be employed to extract more information and data and some statistics, not too dissimilar from what marketing companies like Facebook, Google are doing in order to serve you the most targeted and relevant web ads, so you can satisfy your shopping cravings. Cyber attackers are also taking out this data and doing their statistics, and they further their social engineering capabilities using them. This will translate throughout 2022 and beyond into more successful spam and phishing, malicious web ads, and social media scams as well. And this is worrying for the entire cybersecurity industry as a whole, because social engineering is still the most common way how attackers get into their initial foot into networks and systems of the companies, and through which they can launch and do launch all these ransomware attacks and other threats we were talking about before. So this is very worrying for us. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Thomas. At the end of it, really going into the wider scale and the bigger scale, state-sponsored groups will look for more collaboration. Not that they have not in the past, but a lot more will happen. I will not name some of those countries and entities, but what we have really seen is collaboration across states, state-sponsored actors and threat actors, as we call them, outsourcing of different components to different entities on a different soil or as part of a organization structure of a different state-sponsored group. So a lot more will happen in this space, wherein it will become difficult what cyber defenders have traditionally done, that, oh, this is the technique or this is where this particular attack is originating. Here is the group that I think is launching this attack, and here are my quite essential cyber defense 101 against this group. Now, when this becomes a more open collaboration, it'll be very difficult for cyber defenders to really pinpoint where it is coming from. It'll be difficult for us to understand what are they really looking for. Is it because of geopolitical animosity? Is it because of competitive nature and winning, getting their companies to win global tenders? Is it about trying to drive their way of life and proving that that is better than what some of the other organizations and countries are talking about? It's all of those. That's why in 2022, CYFIRMA reckons that hacking groups will share infrastructure, tools, techniques, and tradecraft, making it more difficult for cyber researchers to attribute threat actors to specific campaigns. I'm sure Thomas has lots to add on to this, so over to you, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, as the old saying goes, enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's being proven right once again. And when we go through the underground forums and the advertising we already mentioned before and some other chatter over there, we see like feelings of unity and friendship among the cyber criminals from various countries. And we already knew for years that the Chinese and North Korean cyber criminal groups are working with each other and hiring each other's services as well. What is new are collaboration between Chinese and Russian actors, or even hacktivists inside the English-speaking countries or Western countries in general, trying to get familiar with the Russian threat actors. And the Russian underground forums like RAMP or XSS, which used to be exclusively Russian speaking and the English or any other language for that matter was not allowed, is now accommodating both Mandarin and English speakers. And they are looking forward to and are being keen to collaborate with each other. And we've seen an example where Chinese users are supplying the Russian ransomware operators with initial access to target specific companies, which are seemingly having some geopolitical interest as well. This is only an assumption, but given the geopolitical tension and respective nations' intelligence operators' involvement in these forums, we think with somewhat moderate confidence that nation states are the ones turning to foreign ransomware gangs and their capabilities to achieve their objectives and use that malicious infrastructure to deploy some spyware and whatnot. And at the same time, I already mentioned the hacktivist groups as well within the Western countries that they do not agree with the directions their countries are taking and stuff like that. They are also turning to these services and capabilities of foreign ransomware groups. Back to Sarah.
Thank you, Thomas. So in entirety, if we really look at what this is all about, it is all about understanding what's really happening in your external threat landscape, whether it's a country, whether it's an institution, whether it's an organization, wherein you need to have a visibility of what's really happening out there. Yes, there are perimeter defense systems, and yes, things might be all well covered within the perimeter, but the action is most likely originating from out there. So you need to have those external threat landscape management strategies to really move from an event-driven reactive cybersecurity approach and process to intelligence-led predictive cyber posture management. It's about telling you, gaining visibility of what might be coming your way. Is there a potential attack coming your way, which you should be really looking to thwart before it hits your endpoints or before it hits your server? Do you know how you are lucratively looking to the hacker out there, to the cyber criminal out there, to the threat actor out there? Do you know what are those geopolitical movers and shaker activities and events happening out there that will have a negative impact on your cybersecurity posture, or you are caught in a geopolitical storm? It is all of these. It is gaining a predictive intelligence view. It is gaining a visibility on your digital profile in the external threat landscape so you can take proactive actions. But more importantly, it is the need of the hour to understand these predictions, to embrace the external threat landscape management so that organizations, institutions, and even countries move away from a reactive posture to a proactive posture. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you, Saurabh. Thanks, Thomas. That was very enlightening. 2022 will definitely be an interesting year for cyber criminals, and the challenges before defenders cannot be overstated. 2022 will be the year to start managing threats differently and harnessing cyber intelligence to understand your external threat landscape and build better cyber strategies to protect your company. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write to contact@cyfirma.com. Thank you once again. We wish you a safe and secure 2022.